anything that you don't like or whatever. And that's it. And then we'll move on to the next section. Do a share screen of. There it is. That and that. Okay. Oh, dang it. I have one more. I swear, I have like 10 programs that I have to start up every single time. Okay, there we go. Now it's all in there.
In the 10th month, on the first day of the month, the tops of the mountains were seen. On the mountains of Ararat. And the waters continued to abate until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the first day of the heavens were closed, the rain from the heavens was restrained, and the waters receded from the earth continually. At the end of 150 days the waters had abated, and in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. And the waters continued to abate until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the first day of the month, the tops of the mountains were seen. At the end of 40 days Noah opened the window of the ark that he had made and sent forth a raven. It went to and fro until the waters were dried up from the earth. Then he sent forth a dove from him to see if the waters had subsided from the face of the ground. But the dove found no place to set her foot, and she returned to him to the ark, for the waters were still on the face of the whole earth. So he put out his hand and took her and brought her into the ark with him. He waited another 7 days, and again he sent forth a dove out of the ark. And the dove came back to him in the evening, and behold, in her mouth was a freshly plucked olive leaf. So Noah knew that the waters had subsided from the earth. Then he waited another 7 days and sent forth the dove, and she did not return to him any more.
Okay, let's chat about it. Was everyone able to hear it, by the way? Or we move forward?
I can hear it.
Okay. So we have flood subsiding and the ark coming to a rest on the mountain, and then he lets essentially a dove go 3 times. But what is what would be the significance of the dove? If anyone knows or has any theories on the significance of the dove. No. Just a second. So rabbinically speaking, it talks about a bird being sent out 3 times. The first time, it essentially comes back and finds that the earth is still flooded. The second time, it comes back with a kind of this hope for a new creation, the torn piece. The third time, it goes out and never returns, which is seen as a point to the Messiah, being that the first time it has gone out, which is listed in, I think it's Lamentations 1:3 and Ezekiel, talking about the Spirit of God going out, and the dove found no rest, and so it returned. Second time it goes out, the Spirit of God goes out, and it finds something to rest on, and it brings back a torn piece. So something was injured, but then it was brought back to God. And then the third time it goes out, it does not return, because at this point, It is living in the world, and it has no need to actually go back. So this is seen as the messianic, being that first time Spirit of God goes out, there was no Messiah, no one worthy of a Messiah to rest on. Second time, finds a Messiah. The Messiah is brutally beaten, it is torn, and then returns back to God. The third time, when the Messiah returns, he will come back to earth, and he will never be removed from the earth again. He will be there constantly and not return back to the heavens. And he'll dwell on earth with us forever. The idea of being torn comes from, like, torn being the Messiah of Joseph. Comes from the Hosea 6:1-2, which talks about, for he has been torn, but he will heal. He has wounded us, but he will bandage us. He will revive us after 2 days. He will raise us up on the third day, that we may live before him. In the rabbinic, it says, why does it compare Israel to an olive? Keep in mind the dove brought back a torn olive branch. It says, why does it compare Israel to an olive? Just as the olive releases its oil only through its crushing, so too Israel produces its best only through crushing. In her beak was a torn olive leaf. Spelled that wrong. The olive leaf symbolizes the punishment of Israel, for it was torn. He has torn, but he will heal. This means that the affliction itself will bring the healing. By means of the affliction, he brings the healing. The cure is in the coming of the Messiah. The torn olive leaf is the Messiah, son of David. So the torn olive leaf is essentially the Messiah of Joseph, but the healing comes from the Messiah of David. And I'm trying to find the other one. There's another good rabbinic. Genesis Rabbah 33:6. What does the word torn mean? It means nothing but killed. As Jacob says in Genesis 38:33, Joseph has surely been torn to pieces. And then also in the Targum Pseudo Jonathan, it says, Rav Abba says, Noah's dove brought the olive leaf from the young shoots of the land of Israel. Rav Levi says she brought it from the Mount of Olives. The Targum says she took it from the Mount of the Messiah. So it's all the rabbinic stuff is tying this into this messianic age, and how the dove and the olive and the branch of the olive, the leaf from the olive, this torn piece, all relates to the Messiah and this threefold. It goes out trying to find one. No one's worthy. It comes back, goes out again, finds someone who's worthy, but that person is killed, and then the spirit returns back to God, and then finally the spirit comes back and it lives with everyone for eternity after that. And this is something that all rabbis have seen as being this thing. But when the spirit returns, that spirit returning is now going into the Messiah of David. And this is where in Judaism you would see this difference between them believing that the Messiah of Joseph is different than the Messiah of David, when really it is the exact same branch, the exact same spirit that's going back out. Okay. Any other comments, questions, disagreements, anything, or any other messianic ties, or I guess any other notes in here? And Takuya, Tak. I'm just gonna call you Tak. How's it going? And I'm glad you finally made it. All right. Open comments, commentary, questions.
Yeah, also the olive is about the oil, so maybe it has something to do with it, because the ark is kind of like connected to a safe place, kind of like the Ruach, the spirit.
Yeah, there's a and this one we got really into that in last week's portion. talking about how there's this huge representation of the ark essentially being the holding place where all of the righteous are saved and kept. It's seen as like the I don't know if you're familiar with like the nefesh and the neshama, but this is where like the neshama is being kept and waiting until there's the new heaven, new earth, essentially, and then being released from the ark so that they're put into this new world, and under all the evil has been gotten rid of at that point.
Yeah, I never thought so deeply about the dove, but it's intriguing.
Yeah, there's a lot of really cool stuff, and we might go back through some of the arc things after this if people want to stick around for it. But yeah, this is probably going to end up being another 2 or 3 hour one. Okay, we'll keep on going. We'll do verse 13 through we'll do 13 through 19.
In the 601st year, in the first month, the first day of the month, the waters were dried from off the earth. And Noah removed the covering of the ark, and looked, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. In the second month, on the 27th day of the month, the earth had dried out. Then God said to Noah, Go out from the ark, you and your wife, and your sons wives with you. Bring out with you every living thing that is with you of all flesh, birds and animals and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth, that they may swarm on the earth and be fruitful and multiply on the earth. So Noah went out, and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him. Every beast, every creeping thing, and every bird, everything that moves on the earth, went out by families from the ark.
It's interesting that it says everything that moves on the earth went out by families from the ark. Personally, I don't know if that would hint at the idea that there was some breeding that was going on in the ark. Some animals having lifespans of far less than a year would have most likely had to have bred to exist in the ark during that time, so I assume so. But rather than went out by, 2s and 7s or whatever, or just all the animals just went out, it specifically mentions families, which is just, it's an interesting note there. The other thing is that it talks about in the first day of the month, this is Rosh Hashanah. And after judgment, so you have the entire earth flooded with water, cleansing of all evil from the earth, and then you have the beginning of a new year right on this day when they leave the ark. And if you go into Revelation as well, we have the judgment happen, the trumpet of the Messiah sounds, and there's this new era that's ushered in, this new heaven, new earth. Then it says in, trying to find the quote for it, it's a midrash on it, saying that Moses saw a new world. Noah saw a new world. Says Noah saw a new world, not only a new world in that the water of the flood had receded, he also saw a new heaven and a new earth. He saw the day which it is written in Isaiah 51:4, a Torah will go forth from me. So this is saying that when Noah left the ark, he not only experienced like this new world, essentially, of, how the plains changed, waters were different, the whole face of the earth and the sky were completely different than it had been before, but also he was able to get a glimpse into the Messianic age, which I think is really, really cool. And the whole symbolism behind Rosh Hashanah and the coming of the Messiah and how that all relates as well. So yeah. Any other commentary, notes, questions, anything else?
I don't think I can hear the Bible talking for some reason.
Oh, you might have to click on my stream, or on my name or something. There should be a screen share, and you should be able to have volume control over that. I used to read off everything, but that got reading off like 6 chapters was a little bit much.
I would just go out and maybe come back.
Okay.
Because my phone broke down for some reason, and maybe that's why I'm not hearing the Bible.
Gotcha.
Then no.
Okay, we're gonna do Genesis 8:20 through, 8:20 through 9:17.
Noah built an altar to the Lord, and took some of every clean animal and some of every clean bird, and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And when the Lord smelled the pleasing aroma, the Lord said in his heart, I will never again curse the ground because of man, for the intention of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I ever again strike down every living creature as I have done. While the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease. And God blessed Noah and his sons, and said to them, Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth. The fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth, and upon every bird of the heavens, upon everything that creeps on the ground, and all the fish of the sea. Into your hand they are delivered. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. And as I gave you the green plants, I give you everything. But you shall not eat flesh with its life, that is, its blood. And for your lifeblood I will require a reckoning. From every beast I will require it, and from man. From his fellow man I will require a reckoning for the life of man. Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed. For God made man in his own image. And you be fruitful and multiply, increase greatly on the earth, and multiply in it. Then God said to Noah and to his sons with him, Behold, I establish my covenant with you and your offspring after you, and with every living creature that is with you, the birds, the livestock, and every beast of the earth with you, as many as came out of the ark. It is for every beast of the earth. I establish my covenant with you, that never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of the flood, and never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth. And God said, This is the sign of the covenant that I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you, for all future generations. I have set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. When I bring clouds over the earth, and the bow is seen in the clouds, I will remember my covenant that is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. And the waters shall never again become a flood to destroy all flesh. When the bow is in the clouds, I will see it, and remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is on the earth. God said to Noah, This is the sign of the covenant that I have established between me and all flesh that is on the earth.
Okay. Comments, questions, anything else? In verse 11 says, I establish my covenant with you that it shall never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of the flood, nor will there be a flood to destroy the earth. This is kind of a messianic as well. We have this idea that God or the God promising Noah that he will never destroy the earth with a flood, very specifically a flood. But likewise, in the Messianic age, it is that God swears to the people after the final redemption. So this is a mini redemption here. But after the final redemption, God will never destroy the people ever again, because there's going to be a final redemption where there is no more death, there's no more destruction, there's no more tears, no more anything else. So this is just a very, very small, almost like a preview of the Messianic age once again. There's another interesting thing, and I'll just read off this midrash here in regards to the bow in the clouds. It doesn't say rainbow, it just says the bow in the clouds, which is interesting. It says, as the appearance of the bow in the clouds on a rainy day, so is the appearance of the surrounding radiance. Such was the appearance of the likeness of the glory of God, in Ezekiel 1:28. It says, like the appearance of a bow that is in the cloud. Oh, sorry, that was the verse. Jesus also reflected the radiance of God, but this is, or the Messiah in this, I just replaced with Jesus, will reflect the radiance of God. The rainbow also serves as a warning. God will not destroy the earth by a flood, but he will destroy many by other means for disobedience. Likewise, Messiah is returned to heaven, but he too acts as a warning, as it says in Isaiah 49:2. He made my mouth like a sharp sword. In the shadow of his hands he hid me. He made me like a polished arrow. In his quiver he hid me away. In Genesis 9:14, when I bring clouds over the earth and the bow is seen in the clouds. Matthew 24:30 is another one I pulled, and that one is then it's loading. Then will appear in the heavens the sign of the Son of Man, and then the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. So it speaks of the Messiah as being an arrow who is hidden away in a quiver. So he is out and shown as a warning. And we can see this throughout the New Testament, Jesus saying, repent, repent, repent. But in Isaiah saying that this Messiah is like the arrow who is shown to everyone and saying, here is a warning, but also a promise. And then the arrow is hidden and it's tucked away into God's quiver. And this bow, to essentially shoot the arrow from, serves as a sign in the clouds. And all of that's pointing to this judgment day. But the bow in itself is not just a, here's a happy thing. I will never, like, everything's at peace. It is also a warning. And I think that that's usually skipped over, is the idea that that God's promise, like most of his promises, also serve as a warning and not just a like, here's something I will never do. All right, now live happily. But it's watch yourself, stay true, follow my commands. All right, any other comments, questions, disagreements, anything I said that's just completely ridiculous? Oh, and speaking of Descendants, we're getting into that part next.
I have just a question about the everlasting covenant.
Yeah.
The circumcision was also an everlasting covenant, and I've been struggling with understanding exactly why that is. Is it maybe in relation to this another everlasting covenant?
Yeah, the covenants are everlasting, and none of them override a previous one or anything like that. So they're all still in effect, and the final one would just be on top of that as well.
And could the circumcision point to that messianic age or heaven? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably something within circumcision that would point to the messianic age. I'm not sure what it would be. I know it was in Judaism. It's done as a entering into the covenant, as a Jewish person, and as like the male children on the 8th day. That's something that you would do to do that. Conversion into Judaism also requires it, regardless of age. But as far as the messianic, how it points to the Messiah, I'm not sure. I'm sure it does. I just don't know the exact way that it points.
Thanks.
I don't know. Someone else might. Someone else wants to chime in. Okay. And is Solar in here? No, he's not. Hold on a second. I'm gonna tag Solar real quick. We'll see if he actually pops in. So we were just talking about this a couple of minutes ago, but this was the next part that we're going to be getting into is sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and yeah, that's we've had a few people pop into our Discord that are part of the Black Hebrew Israelite movement, and yeah, if Solar joins in, we might have some of that conversation real quick, but if not, we'll just keep rolling. Okay, Noah's Descendants. We'll do 18 through 28, I guess.
The sons of Noah who went forth from the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham was the father of Canaan. These three were the sons of Noah, and from these the people of the whole earth were dispersed. Noah began to be a man of the soil, and he planted a vineyard. He drank of the wine and became drunk and lay uncovered in his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his two brothers outside. Then Shem and Japheth took a garment, laid it on both their shoulders, and walked backward and covered the nakedness of their father. Their faces were turned backward, and they did not see their father's nakedness. When Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his youngest son had done to him, he said, "Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be to his brothers." He also said, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant. May God enlarge Japheth, and let him dwell in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant." After the flood, Noah lived 350 years. All the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. These are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Sons were born to them after the flood. The sons of Japheth, Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tyrus. The sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, Riphath, and Togarmah. The sons of Javan, Elisha, Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodanim. From these the coastland peoples spread in their lands, each with his own language, by their clans in their nations. The sons of Ham, Cush, Egypt, Put, and Canaan. The sons of Cush, Seba, Havilah, Sabta, Raamah, and Sabtika. The sons of Raamah, Sheba, and Dedan. Cush fathered Nimrod. He was the first on earth to be a mighty man. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. The beginning of his kingdom was Babel, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh in the land of Shinar. From that land he went into Assyria and built Nineveh, Rehoboth-ir, Calah, and Rezin between Nineveh and Calah. That is the great city. Egypt fathered Ludim, Anamim, Lehabim, Naphtuhim, Pathrusim, Casluhim, from whom the Philistines came, and Caphtorim. Canaan fathered Sidon his firstborn, and Heth, and the Jebusites, the Amorites, the Girgashites, the Hivites, the Arkites, the Sinites, the Arvadites, the Zemarites, and the Hamathites. Afterward the clans of the Canaanites dispersed, and the territory of the Canaanites extended from Sidon in the direction of Gerar as far as Gaza, and in the direction of Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, and Zeboim as far as Lasha. These are the sons of Ham by their clans, their languages, their lands, and their nations. To Shem also, the father of all the children of Eber, the elder brother of Japheth, children were born. The sons of Shem, Elam, Asher, Arpachshad, Lud, and Aram. The sons of Aram, Uz, Hul, Gether, and Mash. Arpachshad fathered Shelah, and Shelah fathered Eber. To Eber were born 2 sons. The name of the one was Peleg, for in his days the earth was divided, and his brother's name was Joktan. Joktan fathered Almodad, Sheleph, Hazarmaveth, Jerah, Adoram, Uzal, Diklah, Obal, Abimael, Sheba, Ophir, Havilah, and Jobab. All these were the sons of Joktan. The territory in which they lived extended from Mesha in the direction of Sephar to the hill country of the east. These are the sons of Shem by their clans, their languages, their lands, and their nations. These are the clans of the sons of Noah according to their genealogies, in their nations, and from these the nations spread abroad on the earth after the flood. Now the whole earth had one language and the same words, and as people migrated from the east, they found a plain in the land of Shinar.
Went a little bit too far. Okay. So it says, these are the clans of the sons of Noah according to their genealogies in their nations, and from these nations spread abroad on the earth after the flood. The children of Shem, Ham, and Japheth numbers to a total of 70 sons. And this is just rabbinically speaking, 70 sons who are the fathers of 70 nations, from where the term the 70 languages comes from. When each father's tongue was changed, the Septuagint was originally written by 70 scribes, and it contained the Torah, and it could be that this is the first translation of the Bible into one of the 70 languages of the nation. So there's like this, there's a few different ties in here. One of them is like a messianic one, being that there is going to be the Torah that flows out to all of the nations. And currently we have a slight fulfillment of that prophecy, being that the Torah is available in all the different languages around the world. So everyone can read the Torah. Some of them are somewhat crappy of translations, but we have like this little preview of the Torah in every single language. And where everyone had the same language previously, it is said that all people will have one tongue again in the Messianic age. I think there's also a verse for that, but I don't know what it is off the top of my head. But everyone will be unified, having a common language once again. So these 70 nations, the 70 sons, the 70 languages, this is all tying in to being essentially where all of the population comes from. All of Earth's population really comes from. And this is also speaking into, partially into the inclusion of the Gentiles, being that previously everyone was one tongue, but then everyone got separated, and then everyone will be brought in together as one, not just Jewish people, but everyone across the entire world. So it's the inclusion of Gentiles into this one common. Then I don't think I have a note on this, but there is also the 70, I think it's called like the 70 princes. It's the 70 angels, and each angel that looks over a different nation. And so there's 70 princes of each area. And let me see if I actually have something on that. Daniel 10:13. There's a mention of the prince of the kingdom of Persia, withstood me for 21 days, but Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, for I was left there with the kings of Persia. Speaking of Michael being one of the angels who is actually, I guess, one of the caretakers of one of the nations. He's been appointed over it. So there's 70 angels associated with that. And the Tower of Babel, which we're about to get into, is where the languages are dispersed into 70 different languages so that they couldn't understand one another, but it's based off their family. So the families would stick together, which has always been seemingly important throughout the Torah, is you have husband and wife at all costs keep them together. So it wasn't like each person, like a husband couldn't understand his wife anymore and creating all these hostile family environments. The kids can no longer understand their parents, but rather all these families. So each of the 70 lines had their father's tongue was changed, and thus all of their children's tongues were changed from those. So yeah, you could stay with your family, and so each nation essentially was created and separated based on their language or based off their lineage. Okay, going into the Tower of Babel, unless you guys have other questions or anything else. Comments, questions? Get into the Tower of Babel. Okay, here we go.
Are and settled there. And they said to one another, Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone and bitumen for mortar. Then they said, Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth. And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of man had built. And the Lord said, Behold, they are one people, and they have all one language, and this is only the beginning of what they will do. And nothing that they propose to do will now be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and there confuse their language, so that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord dispersed them from there over the face of all the earth, and they left off building the city. Therefore its name was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth. And from there the Lord dispersed them over the face of all the earth.
Okay, so I did find the verse that talks about the whole world having one tongue again. It's Zephaniah 3:9. It says, For that time I will change the speech of the people to a pure speech, so that all of them may call upon the name of the Lord and serve him with one accord. And that was in the Midrash of Noah, saying that this is a reversal of that. So Tower of Babel disperses everyone into multiple languages, but in Zephaniah it speaks of the Messianic age where everyone from the 70 different languages return back to a single language, the same language that was used to create the universe.
I have a question that I forgot from the last chapter. It's about Nimrod, that was a mighty warrior before God. I've heard that in some study that it means that he was against God somehow.
Yeah, there's a lot of different views on Nimrod. You have like essentially the sun worship and was it Ceramis? Nimrod going to war against God, only to be defeated by flies. There's a bunch of stories about Nimrod. Oh, there's another one where Nimrod, was it Ham stole? Sorry, backing up. Adam and Eve had the garments made by God, which allowed them to have still like dominion over animals. They passed those down to Noah through Methuselah and everything else, or Enoch, but passed down to Noah. So Noah had them on the ark, and then Ham stole them from the ark and gave one to Nimrod. So then Nimrod became a mighty warrior because he had the garment. So all animals would just like come up to him and basically be submissive to him no matter how big, and then he would just be able to kill them. So he was seen as like this great warrior who even the animals bowed to, thus portraying him like a god, which is why people would worship him and bow down to him and treat him like God. And then I think he went into battle and died, but during that time Ceramis committed adultery and ended up pregnant, but to hide the affair, because the husband was already dead, she said that like when she got pregnant, the husband had died previous and she didn't know. So then she claimed that the goat god, which was the god of the sun, Saturn, impregnated her with her husband to be a half god, half man virgin, the first virgin birth story, essentially. But it was this fully man, fully god baby child that was created, and that's why you have Saturnalia, which is December 25th, and how Christmas all ties into that. So there's like that whole story being built into Nimrod, and then you also have just this idea that Nimrod was just one of the kings, and he was the ruler of that area. He was appointed as a ruler, nothing more, and that they were building the ziggurat, which is the Tower of Babel, which is supposed to be this giant stairway that leads up to heaven with a room on the top. There's no rooms anywhere else, just one at the top, and it's specifically for like angels and for God to be able to come down, rest up, and then walk the rest of the way down in the morning so that he could be greeted and worshiped by everyone. The issue with the Tower of Babel is that in either case, but if it was built for God, similar to like the golden calf being built for God and then having this whole thing about God afterwards, the command is that they need to go forth, multiply, they need to spread out. And then instead they stuck together in one place and they didn't cover the face of the earth. They stood in one spot and said, we're going to do this instead of following God's command. So then when God came down, which is like the ziggurat idea of going down to the top and visiting the people, he instead confused all their languages so that they were forced to spread out, thus actually accomplishing what God asked them to do originally. When they could have all had the same language and everything else, now they were forced to. So there are tons of different ways of Nimrod's role in all of this. But Nimrod, I think there's a few verses that talk about it. Nimrod playing a huge role within Abraham's childhood as well, because what is Abraham's father's name is, I'm blanking on it, but Abraham's father worked for Nimrod as like his right-hand man, and there's a bunch of midrash and everything else that's around that, which is really awesome. And we'll get into that once we get to that point. But yeah.
And
yeah.
Semiramis is also the origin of some many pagan cults and other god worship. Like I heard about the Easter eggs that should come from her cult, and so
Yep.
they were up to no good in this Tower of Babel. It was not him being a mighty warrior. There's something in this sentence. Maybe it's in the translation that it's not very clear. I think it was really against God because so many wrong false god worship came from this Nimrod and Semiramis.
Yep. Yeah, and so that's where there's a lot of different polls. It could be that possibly all of them are true. I mean, it's the typical, I guess, like the Jewish approach, like you're right, you're both right. But saying that perhaps he was building a ziggurat of some kind to ultimately worship God, and also while he was like away fighting or something, God had killed him with flies or whatever other thing that happened, which that whole story is hilarious. But then while he was away, that's when, you know, Semiramis then was like, oh, I'm pregnant by the sun god, and really that's where she, like, everything kind of came from. So I am not sure exactly how it all panned out. I know that Nimrod, being from the line of Ham, was supposed to serve Shem, and so it was like this reverse order, whereas the blessing went to Shem so that Ham would end up serving him. Instead, his descendants, Shem's descendants, ended up serving Ham's descendants. So it's backwards of what the blessing was supposed to be. So that could also have played a role in there.
Yeah, and there's so much talk nowadays of rebuilding the Tower of Babel, like in the European Parliament, for example, that is shaped like the Tower of Babel painting.
Interesting. Let's see if I can pull up. I don't know if anyone knows what a ziggurat looks like, but I will pull one up so you can see. There it is. That is a ziggurat. Taller ones would have like a couple little like resting stop areas around here, which would be for like the priests and things. But this area at the top, there's no rooms on the inside. This whole structure is just designed so that it would reach as high as it could to the heavens and essentially build like you could build a name for yourself by being like, this is the place of God. This is God's temple and the place we chose, which goes against a lot of Torah. But building this place where there's this little resting room so angels or deity could descend, stay here. There's a little bed. There's a table with food and drinks, and the priest would go up and replenish it on a regular basis. So there's always fresh bread and things so that if they ever wanted to come down, it was ready for them. And then deities would be able to come down and then descend on the stairs and then be greeted by the people. And people would just be waiting to see whether or not they were there. Very interesting building, and it serves no purpose at all except to be a stairway for angels and things to walk down. And that is it. That is its entire purpose.
It's also look very much like the pyramid of the all-seeing eye that's used in many conspiracies.
Yep. Yeah. The back of the dollar bills and all that. It's very similar to like the pyramids. Pyramids have tons of rooms on the inside, which is it's just kind of weird. There's the burial of the dead on the inside, and lots of rooms and chambers and whatever else, which is, I guess, opposite of a ziggurat in many ways.
But normally there's a all-seeing eye on top of the pyramid, which looks like this place you're talking about with the angels coming in. It's exactly this idea.
Yeah. Yeah, it's this it's kind of like a symbol of divinity resting upon the tower. But welcome, Solar. We just went through the sons. Yeah, we just went through all the sons of everyone, talking about the 70 languages, but Noah's sons in particular.
Gotcha.
Yeah. What's up?
Oh, no.
Okay.
Where are we on? What portion are we on?
This one is Noah.
Oh, Noah. Gotcha.
Yeah. Which we're almost done with this part, and then we'll dip into a little bit of the next portion. I'm trying to like catch up a little bit more on each one.
Yeah. That's it.
Terah was his name. Anyways, Terah is Abraham's father. But he was the one who is like Nimrod's right-hand man, but Terah served Nimrod. Nimrod was from Ham. Terah was from Shem, and Shem's descendants are supposed to rule over Ham's descendants, according to the blessing.
Were they black or white?
So yeah, this is where we were talking about. There are 70 sons are the 70 nations, and there is no mention of anything about skin color or caring about skin color at all in any of this. And it's for a reason. It's because God really does not care.
Yeah.
If he did, he would be like, oh, and then the descendants of Shem are going to be, I don't know, white, or the descendants of Ham are going to be white, and you will know them because of their skin color, and don't breed with them because they're evil or they're good or what. I don't know. Just it falls apart as soon as you start trying to explain it.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if we actually got all the way down there. Okay. Shem's descendants. I think that's where we're at. So, yeah. Okay. Yeah, we'll go into Shem's descendants and then Terah's descendants. Here we go.
These are the generations of Shem. When Shem was 100 years old, he fathered Arpachshad 2 years after the flood. And Shem lived after he fathered Arpachshad 500 years, and had other sons and daughters. When Arpachshad had lived 35 years, he fathered Shelah. And Arpachshad lived after he fathered Shelah 403 years, and had other sons and daughters. When Shelah had lived 30 years, he fathered Eber. And Shelah lived after he fathered Eber 403 years, and had other sons and daughters. When Eber had lived 34 years, he fathered Peleg. And Eber lived after he fathered Peleg 430 years, and had other sons and daughters. When Peleg had lived 30 years, he fathered Reu. And Peleg lived after he fathered Reu 209 years, and had other sons and daughters. When Reu had lived 32 years, he fathered Serug. And Reu lived after he fathered Serug 207 years, and had other sons and daughters. When Serug had lived 30 years, he fathered Nahor. And Serug lived after he fathered Nahor 200 years, and had other sons and daughters. When Nahor had lived 29 years, he fathered Terah. And Nahor lived after he fathered Terah 119 years, and had other sons and daughters. When Terah had lived 70 years, he fathered Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Now these are the generations of Terah.
I'm going to read through all this. We'll go through... we'll go through chapter 15. Yeah, we'll go all the way up to 15. So we're probably looking at least another hour here. But we'll finish up reading the Terra's Descendants, and then we'll do some commentary, and then I'm going to take probably like a 5-minute break, and then we'll continue with the rest of the portion, because we'll be getting into the next portion and doing a few chapters out of the next portion as well. So, okay. Anyways, that's my PSA for now. Terra's Descendants. Here we go.
Terah fathered Abram, Nahor, and Haran fathered Lot. Haran died in the presence of his father Terah in the land of his kindred, in Ur of the Chaldeans. And Abram and Nahor took wives. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife Milcah, the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah and Iscah. Now Sarai was barren, she had no child. Terah took Abram his son, and Lot the son of Haran his grandson, and Sarai his daughter-in-law, his son Abram's wife, and they went forth together from Ur of the Chaldeans, to go into the land of Canaan. But when they came to Haran, they settled there. The days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran.
Okay. Gonna take a quick break. We'll do like a little 5-minute break, and then we will get back. So if anyone needs to go to the bathroom or anything else, do that right now, and then I'm gonna pull up everything for the next portion, and we'll go through a couple chapters of that. But any questions or comments on any of this? I didn't look too heavily into lineage stuff as I usually do, but if you have
quick
anything,
random question.
Yeah.
So what language did Jesus speak? Wasn't it Hebrew? Or because I was talking to these Israelites, they said the Jews changed it to Hebrew, but it was originally Abrahamic or Aramaic.
I mean, Jesus spoke Aramaic and also Hebrew, and also Greek.
Yes. Yeah. Gotcha.
So,
wait, Greek too? He spoke all three?
Yeah. It's like an American thing that in America, most people only speak one language. In most other countries, people speak 2 to 3 languages.
Yeah. Gotcha.
So yeah, it wouldn't be uncommon. The scriptures were all written in Hebrew. The common language among many Jewish people was Aramaic during that time, but also because they would have known Hebrew from scriptures. They had to study the scriptures in Hebrew. They were taught it in Hebrew. Their language of their parents and things were more like Aramaic, just because of where they were dispersed and whatnot. But then they were also under Roman rule, and Rome spoke Greek, and so they knew Greek because that's what they were surrounded by. So at home, you've got Aramaic. In the temple, you have Hebrew, and your authorities and everyone around you spoke Greek. So they would have known all three. It would be like the Gentile people who would probably not be familiar with Hebrew as much. Probably some like key words and things, much like if you live in Arizona or Texas, you probably know, a few key words in Spanish. But because they weren't going to the temple, they weren't learning Hebrew, they most likely maybe spoke a little bit of Aramaic and Greek, but probably not Hebrew at that point. I don't know, that's my personal take on it as far as that, but I know that all the Jewish people, at least at first century, would have known Hebrew.
Gotcha. Interesting, but his original language is Aramaic, right?
Is what?
But his original language was Aramaic, right? But he spoke all three of them. Or did he not have original language? Like his original, what he spoke?
Like if there's a Noah language, I don't think it specifies what language was, because during the time of Shem, Ham, and Japheth and Noah, all the language was just one language. No one had different languages. It wasn't until the Tower of Babel that it got split into 70 different languages, and each one based off of another son. So like the 70 sons between the 3 sons of Noah, those 3 had many other sons. Those 70 sons, each one took into a different language. So like Shem didn't have his own language. It was one of the 70 that would have had the language passed down. One of his 70 sons.
Gotcha.
Or I guess his share of the 70.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks from any record that I know of, it would have been like ancient Hebrew is the oldest. As far as like if we're looking at like Moses passing it down.
Gotcha.
So,
now Aramaic, I think it's called in Hebrew sister languages, right? Or is that Arabic and Hebrew? Because Aramaic and Arabic is not.
Those are 2 different things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me pull up this. Tell me I don't have permissions. Where is it? There it is. Okay. Is everyone ready? Do this one. New portion?
Yeah.
Cool. The Call of Avram. And Avram, Abraham, Abram, it's all the same person. So I might use Abram or Abraham interchangeably throughout this. Abram and Abraham are the exact same thing. He's later called Abraham, but originally Avram or Abram. Okay. Here we go. Gonna read through. We'll go all of 12. Yeah, we'll just do the full chapter of 12. Okay.
Now the Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you, and I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed." So Abram went as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. And Abram took Sarai his wife, and Lot his brother's son, and all their possessions that they had gathered, and the people that they had acquired in Haran, and they set out to go to the land of Canaan. When they came to the land of Canaan, Abram passed through the land to the place at Shechem, to the oak of Moreh. At that time the Canaanites were in the land. Then the Lord appeared to Abram and said, "To your offspring I will give this land." So he built there an altar to the Lord who had appeared to him. From there he moved to the hill country on the east of Bethel and pitched his tent, with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. And there he built an altar to the Lord and called upon the name of the Lord. And Abram journeyed on, still going toward the Negeb. Now there was a famine in the land, so Abram went down to Egypt to sojourn there, for the famine was severe in the land. When he was about to enter Egypt, he said to Sarai his wife, "I know that you are a woman beautiful in appearance, and when the Egyptians see you, they will say, 'This is his wife.' Then they will kill me, but they will let you live. Say you are my sister, that it may go well with me because of you, and that my life may be spared for your sake." When Abram entered Egypt, the Egyptians saw that the woman was very beautiful. And when the princes of Pharaoh saw her, they praised her to Pharaoh. And the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. And for her sake he dealt well with Abram. And he had sheep, oxen, male donkeys, male servants, female donkeys, and camels. But the Lord afflicted Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. So Pharaoh called Abram and said, "What is this you have done to me? Why did you not tell me that she was your wife? Why did you say, 'She is my sister,' so that I took her for my wife? Now then, here is your wife, take her and go." And Pharaoh gave men orders concerning him, and they sent him away with his wife and all that he had.
Oh my gosh. Sorry about that. VKL. I'll read this one again. Sorry, I just realized I was mute on Twitch. Okay, so this is the call of Abraham, real quick. Sorry about that. So this is the tradition behind and what was passed down as this is the backstory of Abraham. Okay. Terah, just quick background. Terah is Abraham's father and who worked for Nimrod and kind of like the right-hand man. Okay. With that, here's the Midrash again, take two. All right. And you can see all the points of the Messiah if you've read the New Testament, or know the story at all. You'll see a lot of these similarities. In the night of Abraham's birth in Terah's house, astrologers and wise men of Nimrod came to the house of Terah and ate and drank and rejoiced with him that night because of the birth. When they left the house, they lifted up their eyes towards the heaven to look at the stars, and they saw and behold one great star from the east that ran across the heavens and swallowed up the four stars at the four corners. They were all astonished at the sight, and they understood this matter. They knew it was important. They said to one another, "This betokens that the child that has been born into Terah this night, Abram, will grow up and be fruitful, and he will multiply and possess all of the earth, he and his children forever. And he and his seed will slay great kings and inherit their lands." Later on, they went to the king Nimrod and told him the sight they had seen and also passed along their interpretation. And then they added the advice that Nimrod pays the value of Abraham, his newborn son, to Terah, and then when he receives the baby, he should kill it, because this baby is going to come through and kill all the kings, and basically only his descendants will multiply across the face of the earth. So that's the background of Abram. More into the Midrash, Terah then finds a servant's baby who had also been born that night, and actually delivers the baby over to Nimrod, and then Nimrod slays that baby, and Terah has Abram hide in a cave, essentially, with his mother until he's old enough to then move out. So that is kind of the background of that. However, the number of parallels to the Messiah here, because all the stories, everything in the Old Testament is a foreshadow of the Messiah in some way. There is the literal translation of everything, which you can just read it, and there's like a literal to be pulled out of it. There's a deeper understanding to it, and there's also the messianic portion to it. And how does it relate to the Messiah? Because the Messiah even says, you know, all things written in the prophets and the law are about me. So everything has to relate in that way. So in that same sense, and many of these oral traditions are considered part of this law as well. So this foreshadowing of the Messiah's birth, thousands of years previous, basically is the story in the exact same way for many of these elements. You have wise men in the east seeing a star. You have them going through talking to the king, and the king saying, oh, let me pay tribute to this new baby. But the difference here is the king then sets out to kill all of the babies, much like Nimrod was advising to kill the babies. But the child escapes. And the only difference with the Messiah one is that there's an intervention of angels who come in and tell the wise men, don't go back to the king, don't tell him where he's at. So it's slightly different, but it's overall the same story. You can also compare this to Matthew 2. So if you wanted to use that whole thing that we just talked about, look at Matthew 2 and you'll see pretty much the exact same thing being played out. There's a couple of other stories. This is just earlier, previous to Abram actually being called by the Lord. Oh yeah, and very similar to Moses as well. Yep. And Moses is once again this exact replica of Messiah as well. You can see the same thing, same story, same events being played out over and over in multiple different ways. Adam to Moses, Isaac, Abraham, Jacob, Joseph, all these different people are playing, even Noah, all these people are playing this exact same story in just a slightly different way. And it's all leading to build this complete narrative about the Messiah and who the Messiah really is when he arrives. Okay, the other thing is, and I'm just trying to get as much pre-information leading up into chapter 12 here, which then we'll start going into. There's many rabbis that said that God chose Abraham before the creation of the world. He looked for a single righteous person whom he could justify creating the entire world for, because no one was righteous enough. But he looked at Abraham and said, possibly. So he scanned the generations of those to come. When his eyes saw Abraham, the righteous, he says, and this is the Midrash, saw Abraham the righteous, and he said basically that this is the one. But here's the Midrash for it. It said, once there was a king who sought to build a palace. He began to dig, going further down to lay a foundation, but he found only swampy soil. And so it was in many places. He was not able to build until he dug in one place. And there he found the bedrock, Petra. By the way, that should ring a bell for people who have also had conversations with apostolic succession, found a bedrock being Petra, which you can also find in Matthew 16:18. Anyway, thus he says, I am building and placing foundations here, and he built. So too the Holy One sought to create the world. When he was sitting and scrutinizing the generations of Enosh and after the generations of the flood, he said, why should I create the world and let those wicked men arise and vex me? But when the Holy One saw Abraham arise in the future, he said, behold, I have found a Petra to build upon and lay the foundations of the world. Thus he called Abraham Petra. As it says in Isaiah 51, 1 through 2, look to the rock from which you were hewn. And the same word there being Petra. That's the Greek. The Hebrew is different, but for the sake of Matthew 16:18, I'm just replacing it with Petra. So did God create the world, the entire world and the universe for the sake of Abraham? Later on it says, no, not for Abraham, but for Abraham's seed. So Abraham had to exist first so that the seed of Abraham could be brought into the world, and that's the Messiah. During the Talmudic period, the Great Academy of Babylon agreed. So many people had different ideas of this. One said, oh, for the entire Moses, for the justification of Moses, the entire universe was made. Another one said, for Abraham, the entire universe was made. For Adam, the entire universe was made, but he fell. So there's a lot of different opinions on it, but during the what's called the Great Academies of Babylon, they agreed that it was only on the merit of one individual and one righteous man, a truly righteous man who had no sin, that was sometime in the future. That is the one who the entire universe was created for. And all the sages agreed that this is the Messiah. Everything exists because of the Messiah. Paul also uses that exact same reasoning in Colossians 1:16. It says, for by him all things were created, in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions, rulers, authorities, all things were created through him and for him. Not by him, but through him, for the sake of, is what that message is meaning. So that all things were created for the sake of him and for him in the future. So all things will be subject to him. Everything is created for the Messiah, and for the Messiah we exist. By the way of Messiah we exist. Everything is about the Messiah. This whole thing is about it. Okay, so now you know some of the Talmudic stuff about why Abraham, why this is even talking about Abraham, and what role Abraham really plays in all of this. There's another small midrash that I'm going to read, and that one goes into more on the background raising up of Abraham, and I find it hilarious. I told someone the other day and they did not find it funny, but maybe it's just Jewish humor and I'm weird. So anyway, keep in mind, Terah worked for Nimrod. Terah was also an idol maker, so he built up idols and would sell them as like statues of gods, things like that. And Abraham, whether this is like on their journey or whatever, Terah and Abraham are working together at some point. So here's this rabbah on this. Terah was an idol maker. On one occasion, he left Abraham to mind the shop. How old are you? Abraham would ask a customer. The customer would answer that he was 50 or 60 years old. And Abraham would say, woe to this man. He's 60 years old, yet he wants to prostrate himself before an idol that I just made today. The customer would walk away feeling shameful. Then another day, a woman came in with a bowl of flour to offer the idols. So Abraham took a stick, smashed all the idols, except for the biggest one, and then put the stick in the hands of the remaining idol. When Terah came back, he asked Abraham, what happened to these idols? Why are they all smashed? But Abraham responded and said, a woman came to offer flour to one, but this idol said, I want to eat the flour first. And then that idol said, no, I want to eat it first. And so then they all got into a giant fight, and the big one over there grabbed a stick and smashed all of the idols. And then he took the flower for himself. And Terah says, "Why are you lying to me? These idols don't have that kind of intelligence." And Abraham responded, "Let your ears hear what your mouth is saying." Terah was an idol worshiper. And Abraham is basically debunking the whole family business and all of Terah's beliefs and being like, there is a true God. These are not them. So anyways, I just found that one hilarious. And now I'm going to get into more of the chapter 12 stuff that actually relates to more into the scriptures itself. But any other questions, comments, or anything about the Abraham up until this point of chapter 12?
Just I didn't understand the thing about this is live on Twitch.
Yes. Yep. It's on twitch.tv/thenutsari. Just the singular form.
Okay.
Cool. Okay. So getting into more of this commentary here. There are 7 blessings that God gives Abraham, and then ends on, I guess, like what would an 8th blessing be? That says, "To your descendants I give this land." And Paul says that the promise was given both to Abraham and the Messiah. In Galatians 3:16, it says, "The promises were made to Abraham and to his offspring." It does not say "and to his offsprings," plural, or seeds, referring to many, but referring to one, "and your offspring," or your seed, who is Christ. And then again in 2 Corinthians 1:20, Paul says that the Messiah is the answer to the promises that God made Abraham and to the Jewish people. For all the promises of God find their yes in him. And that, it's like a weird translation. But all the promises of God find their fulfillment in him. That is why through him that we utter our amen to God for his glory. All the promises are given to Abraham and to his seed. These apply to Abraham and they apply to the Messiah, the Messiah's seed. So the first one is, "I will make you a great nation." And hold on a second, my throat's killing me. Okay, a little bit of Red Bull. The first one is, "I will make you a great nation." The Jewish people all consider Abraham the father of the great nation. Even the Arabs through Ishmael, you look at all of the Muslim population, and they all attribute Abraham to being the great father of all things, like of all the nations. And then added in with Christianity, where you have all the Gentiles being essentially brought into this as well. You have them also agreeing that Abraham is the great father. We even have a song, "Father Abraham had many sons had Father Abraham." Everything points to Abraham being this great father, this great nation, in the start of all of this. It says, "I will bless you," and is the second promise. Ephesians 1:3 says that, "Blessed be God and the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, who has blessed us in Christ with every spiritual blessing in the heavenly places." Both the natural and the spiritual seed of Abraham inherit the blessings. And there's a rabbinic on this as well. It says, "This is compared to a priest who lifts up his hands to bless Israel with a priestly blessing. And as they do, they bless themselves because they are part of Israel." So as one who blesses Israel and is part of Israel blesses Israel, they, by association, are blessing themselves. So when you bless the Messiah or bless Abraham and the seed of Abraham, you are blessing yourself because you have blessed yourself by the association of being part of that seed. And sorry, there's one note for the first promise, "I will make you a great nation." Another rabbinic, I will show you and I will make you a great nation, means that he foresaw that Jacob would go forth from him as a great nation, and he saw the good news that he will ultimately see their greatness in the days of the Messiah. So there was that. Okay, the third promise is, I will make your name great. Talmudic here. The mysteries of the blessing, I will make your name great, alludes to the Messianic era when Jerusalem and the city of David will be great and the Torah will go out from Zion. The mystery of this blessing contains the coming of the Messiah, son of David, who will rectify the whole world and repair the damages done by the serpent. He will bring true life into the world, and he will even give life to those in Sheol. He will bring about a rectification of the whole world, and death will be swallowed up forever. And we see that the same concepts, the same ideologies, and everything else in Revelation. This is written, far earlier than that, but you have this exact same concept of death is swallowed up forever. You also have it in, I think it's in Isaiah that speaks of that as well. And then Philippians 2:10 through 11, making your name great. First you have the Abraham, now you have the Messiah. And it says in Philippians 2:10 through 11, so that the name of Jesus, every knee should bow in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. The fourth one, you shall be a blessing. Romans 15:9 says, and in order that the Gentiles might glorify God for his mercy, as it is written, therefore I will praise you among the Gentiles and sing to your name. Galatians 3:14, so that in Christ the blessing of Abraham might come to the Gentiles, so that we might receive the promised Spirit through faith. So the blessing is promised to Abraham. It's also promised to us through the Messiah. I will bless those who bless you. Matthew 25:40, Matthew 25:34. The king will answer them, truly I say to you, as you did to the least of these, of my brothers, you did to me. So those who are blessed, if you bless those of Abraham's seed, you in return are going to be blessed. In the Messiah, it's saying, and we can also see this, those who curse you are cursed. If you look at like Balaam, you see that playing out with like Abraham's seed, but also in the Messiah directly, you also have this blessing and curses showing up. So the fifth promise, sixth promise is bless those who bless you, curse those who curse you. As you do to one of my brothers in Christ, you do it to me. Matthew 25:34, the king will say to those on his right, come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you by the foundations of the world. Same concept there. And then he will say to those on on his left, depart from me, you cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. Those who curse the Messiah are cursed. Those who bless the Messiah are blessed. Those who curse Abraham are cursed. Those who curse or bless Abraham or Abraham's descendants are also blessed. So then the last one, talking about, in you all the families of the earth will be blessed, and to your descendants I give this land. The Talmud explains this a little bit further, saying that in you all families of the earth will be blessed refers to the Gentiles who are grafted into Abraham. Paul also uses this to explain that Yeshua is the door to be grafted into. Previously, much like the Garden of Eden, there was this pathway, kind of look at it as a narrow path, and the Garden of Eden had an angel with a flaming sword guarding it. Not guarding it all the way around, but guarding the entrance, which means this is like a closed community garden, and there is one entrance which has been closed off and it's guarded. And that is the entrance. That is the way to the tree of life. This angel essentially has been replaced with Jesus, or the Messiah. And so saying that I am the way, I am this, like no one can get in to the Garden of Eden. No one can get into the New Jerusalem, into heaven, unless they go through me. I am the entrance. I am the gatekeeper. The sheep cannot get into it unless I let them in. So that same thing is being explained in Galatians 3:29. It says, if you are Christ, then you are Abraham's offspring, heirs to the promise. The promise is that you will be able to get back into this land. I don't know why I'm showing you guys from this angle like that. This looks like a door on my side. It doesn't really look like a door on your side. Perspective sucks. Anyway, and it says, to your descendants I give this land, referring to Canaan as the promised land, which the Lord is giving for an inheritance. It's not a past tense promise, but also a future tense promise. In, let's see here. It's Deuteronomy 24. I have the other verse part written down, but they inherit Canaan as their land, and that becomes theirs. Later on, they have it, but they can be exiled, and things happen, and they keep taking it back over. It keeps getting exiled. We are currently in an exile period, but the promise is that we will inherit it, and an inheritance doesn't be taken away forever. So this is something that we will inherit. This is something that we're supposed to have. So we are getting these like sneak previews before every exile, and currently we are in an exile awaiting to receive our inheritance. What was promised to the seed, whether spiritual or physical. If you're the physical seed of Abraham, or if you're the spiritual seed of Abraham, you have this inheritance, and this is yours. And it talks about the boundaries of that at some point. I might be a little bit further down. I'm going to talk about it. Talks about the boundaries of the land that's promised, and it is way larger. We've never actually owned that much land. Jewish people have only taken over small portions, but they've never owned the full totality of what they're actually supposed to inherit. That's never happened before. So this is clearly a demonstration that this is something that's going to happen in the future. This is not something that has happened currently, or it's something in the past or anything like that. Yes, we have owned like Israel as a whole, but we haven't owned the territories and the boundaries that God set up will be our inheritance. So like everything else, this is a sneak preview. Even in Deuteronomy, when they're entering into Canaan and they're about to take it over, or later on in Kings when they actually own the area, that is still only a tiny portion of what is to come, and they've never gotten that. Anyway, comments, questions, suggestions, rebukes, refusal, whatever, for that section. And then I've got one more note that we'll go into, and then we'll get into chapter 13.
Wait, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So I was discussing this with Repent, right?
Yep.
And it's still on my mind because it's like a super scary topic. Can a human make a deal with the devil? Is that possible? It just lingers in my head and just disturbs me. Like,
I'm trying to think of where there's an instance in which someone did that.
There's only one case where it's with Jesus, where the devil offered Jesus, like, you can rule the world, and Jesus said no. So,
right. I think
What about
that
Judas?
about who?
Judas.
I thought he was making a deal with like just people. I thought it was like they'll turn Jesus in for some money. I think, right? Is that
Well, I
what it
think
was?
it had to be a little bit deeper than that, considering Satan entered him.
Well,
Yeah,
I don't know. It's like I don't think it's a little bit of a scary topic, but then I'm like I think about it all the time, so I don't know, and I feel like I'm just not the best at knowing what that stuff is. So it's like I don't know.
I think
Are you new to faith?
No, I've been studying the Bible for a decent amount of time. Not long though. I'm not a
Yeah.
scholar, dude. Like
Like
uh,
Austin is. I'm joking. Yeah.
No, yeah, no. Austin is like a Chad, but like,
Hey, how do you
I don't know
have a
if I don't know if you can make a like if you can make a deal with the devil, but I think that like in a way like the Hasatan or whatever you want to call it, deals are being made with the Satans of Earth constantly.
yeah, like
But as
basically,
far as like an
Sin.
angelic thing, I would say that he would be more to make a deal with you rather than you making a deal with him. Like he is not everywhere at all times. He's not omniscient, omnipotent, anything like that. This is if you're speaking of like the Hasatan as a specific angel,
No, I'm talking
then
like him making like him offering deals with human. Is that like that's what I'm talking about?
I think that's biblical.
Uh, I don't know. I get like so my like I feel like I'm like kind of I don't know. I just get like tricked all the time. So I have really bad OCD, and it manifests in these little voices. I know it's me, but it's like it's very scary, and it just my mind tricks itself to thinking that it's not me. So then I think it's the devil. That's like, oh, do you want to make a deal? And then in my mind, it's like saying all these things. It's always rapid, right? It's a loop. So then
Yeah.
I feel like, oh, did I make a deal or something? Did I accept it?
Yeah.
And then I ask God, I ask God, hey man, don't let these things happen. And usually the deals are not in my favor at all. And I'm like, dude, please, I don't want these things to happen. And I get deeply scared. I get deathly scared. And then I ask, and then I feel maybe that maybe I just asked, and then it happens again. I feel like I make another deal, and then I ask again and again. So then it's a repeating process, and I don't know what to do. I feel stuck.
Well, I would say, you know, for a start, recognize that that's not you making deals with anyone. That's
Mhm.
part of your OCD. And because your mind is going to those places, those thoughts are going round at 100 miles an hour. So just recognize them for what they are. They have nothing to do with making deals with the enemy. That's just part of how your brain works, and that's how it's choosing to manifest itself within your psyche. It has nothing to do with making deals. So I would not be afraid, I would not be scared, and I would
for
not be
the
worried
smart nerd?
because it's the desires of a person's heart which prevails, and that has nothing to do with the desires of your heart. You're just going to have to figure out how to kind of counteract that circular logic. I know it's hard because it moves 1,000 miles an hour, but maybe just try to step away from it because
I try to distract
your
myself
mind is
constantly.
making it something that it's not, which is very scary. I know. I've been there. And I have a lot of friends who have quite severe OCD. So I know what it can be like, but I would try to distance yourself from seeing that as a reality and understanding it as just simply part of your OCD.
Yeah,
Hey,
because
me
I feel
now.
yeah.
What helps me is like meditating on His word. I don't like every time a bad thought comes, like what I usually do is go in the Bible, just sit there and meditate, just sit there and pray in my head.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
So
not
I
how
try.
OCD works, unfortunately.
Yeah, I understand.
Sadly.
So I think what I've been doing recently, I don't think I know. So when I think, I take it as reality, and then I get deeply scared because then what I do afterwards, I say, God, please forgive me. I feel like I've done something terribly wrong. Please forgive me. Um, and I ask him just to make me new every day. And then what happens is I feel like my prayers aren't answered, but I think the reason that they're not answered is it's just not reality. Maybe, I guess. I don't know. It's just scary
I think
topic.
I think it helps to know like what sin is. Like if you're thinking that your headspace is sinning by having ideas and things or having your head
Not
talk to you.
ideas. I feel like it's like making deals in my mind, and then I get deeply scared, and then I'm like, okay, God, help me out here. I feel like I just did something incredibly wrong. Forgive me. Don't let these things happen. Protect me from the devil. And I believe it. But then what happens is I get another doubt in my head, and then it keeps rolling down. It's like a snowball effect. And then I keep doubting my beliefs. And then what happens is I'm like, maybe Jesus would allow these things because because my mind is accepting it. My mind is accepting it. So maybe Jesus will allow it. And then I feel I feel like I'm not even a Christian. I feel like I'm not even saved yet. And I feel like I can't, like, I have to be asking for forgiveness every single day because I'm not even saved. I get those
But
doubts
you
all the
haven't.
time.
But you haven't
Yeah.
sinned. You need to. You really need to take yourself out of that, because you're basically perpetuating your own mind's false perception of what's actually going on. You haven't sinned at all. It's just part of your OCD. That's all it is. And I know that sounds simpler than it's
Yeah,
more
no.
complicated than simple, but you just need to take yourself out of the fact that that's not a reality. That's not what's the reality of what's going on for you at all.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
when it
Well,
starts, you just need to see it as that.
I
Don't condemn yourself over it.
Yeah.
there's what was it? There's a thing with the process of the brain, right? It's kind of funny actually because one of my friends, his name is Jacob. He told me this. It is kind of funny. So whenever someone is told like something truthful and that is logical, their brain starts making up excuses to thinking that it's not logical and tries to go and make it as an excuse. I can't remember what it's
Of
called.
course.
Yeah, I can't remember what it's called, but thank you.
No,
That's
I
really
know what
all I
you
needed.
mean.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. I think what I need to do is to get rid of this confusion is just read the Bible more. That's the honest truth.
Yep.
That's all I can do.
Studying definitely helps. I know for like a lot of things that are, for the most part, things that happen mentally, intrusive thoughts, that kind of thing. As much as I would like to even tell someone who has anxiety, like, stop. It's not justified. Like, there's no reason for you to have anxiety right now. It doesn't really work like that.
Yeah, sometimes
so
I get
yeah, so
I'll let you
like
talk.
telling you like, hey, this isn't what it is. So just stop thinking about it like that. That doesn't really do anything because this is just how your brain processes things right now. It is going to be a long process of, actually, I would say like, yeah, studying and things and learning learning truly what sin actually is, learning about kind of like that black and white line of most of this stuff. So when you're thinking things in your head, you're just like, oh, that's an intrusive thought. And you can think about it a little bit more logically, but it's not something that's happening overnight. And it's not something I can just say, oh, think about it logically. And then be like, oh, that's what I was missing. Like, that's not going to happen.
I've been having this for like maybe like 2 months now of just this constant like battle. But yeah, I just need I've been able to, it was worse. The severity started decreasing. Means I'm starting to get a grasp of it, but I feel like if I just start studying the word more, I think I'll be able to, and also like just think about it for a second, just be in my own head, just be like, okay, how is this true? How does this make this true? Just think about it logically. So I think that's what I'll do. But thank you guys for that.
Yeah. Okay.
Has it been like a year? Has it been like a year?
I have just a question.
Oh, I don't know.
About,
It's been a while. Yeah. Sorry, go
I
ahead.
have just a question about the Promised Land.
Yeah.
Could it be possible that it would be heaven, not a literal land now on earth?
It would have to be a literal land because the specifications are earthly territorial specifications. Even in Revelation, it says that the kingdom of God comes down from the heavens and then dwells on earth, and God himself will dwell with the people on earth. So everything is pointing to like this earthly creation. God created earth specifically for man to inhabit and rule creation with him. And so it wouldn't make sense to make creation just to then destroy it and be like, okay, it no longer matters anymore. Like, we were designed for earth, so earth is where we would be. That's where we'll end up eventually. There's the physical resurrection from the dead is one of the key things that is taught in Judaism today. It is also taught throughout the scriptures. It is a physical resurrection, which means there is a body to resurrect. Jesus was the first one to resurrect from the dead, being fully dead, and then entering into this like perfect perfect life, essentially. But that is a representation of what we will do as well. We will come back from the dead in a physical form, and we will be able to touch and feel each other and everything else. It's not a spiritual thing, it's a physical thing. And then we have to inherit a physical territory with physical boundaries on a physical earth, because that is the promise. And if the promise is just, here's what you'll inherit, these are the exact boundaries, it'll be this many miles by this many miles, and then leaving out but it's more metaphorical. That wouldn't make sense. If that were the case, then there would also have to be the physical fulfillment of that, which means Israel would have had to, at some point, actually own that entire territory for eternity, and that would have been their inheritance, was a physical earthly inheritance, but also a spiritual one. And so far we haven't even had the physical inheritance yet.
But could it be that it would be like in a new earth? Because I think Isaiah was talking of a new earth, but I'm not really sure.
Yep. Yeah, there's a new heaven and new earth. Revelations 21, this is after the 1,000-year reign of Christ. New heaven, new earth appear. And that is when the heavens open up and the kingdom comes down to earth, and then God dwells with his people. But even with the new heaven, new earth, Noah also stepped off the ark and entered a new heaven and new earth. When he looked at the heavens, it was a new heavens. When he looked at the earth, it was a new earth. The term for new doesn't necessarily mean a brand new, like you throw away the old or the existing, but rather a refresh or an improvement on what already existed. So after the flood, the entire earth had changed. There was new mountains, there was new layout, there was new ocean, seas, like the way the entire earth functioned, the landscape, everything looked different. The heavens looked different, the earth looked different. So in the Messianic age as well, you have this, or after the Messianic age, after the 1,000 years, you have this rain down of fire, essentially hit everyone, destroy everything. It also says that there's no more sea anymore. Like the sea is completely gone. It's not a metaphorical sea, but it's like there's a sea on earth and it doesn't exist. There might be lakes, streams, that kind of thing, but there's no more sea. So that would be a complete changing of the land. This would be a new heaven, a new earth. And on this new heaven, new earth, Revelation 21, it would still be the same earth, but made new, polished, refined. I think the general belief in most of like modern Christianity is that you go up into this like heavenly place. There's no actual bodily resurrection. And you live as a spirit up in the sky. And then when Jesus comes down to rule for 1,000 years, you're still up in heaven. You never hang out with him or anything. And this messianic age of peace on earth is where you don't belong. Or you go up to heaven. The other view is you go up to heaven for the rapture. And then you come down to live with the Messiah for 1,000 years, and then you go back up after the 1,000 years. But the Bible, I think, makes it very clear that the only rapture that happens is the rapture of the wicked, and they are raptured for judgment, not for like saving you from torment on earth. That's another whole discussion too. End time stuff. Oh, and Naz is here. Naz, missed you, buddy. All right. Any other comments, questions, or anything else on just the first part of the Abraham or New Heaven, New Earth, or if you guys want to go into rapture or any of that stuff, we can. If not, then I'll get into verse 6 notes here.
Yeah, Austin. So the pre tribulation is like no, the pre tribulation is not true, right? Like cowards made it up just so they could like say that we're gonna be out here and we're not gonna have to go through this or something like that.
I think that the idea of the righteous being raptured, it's taken just from a few verses, but like one of them, just to show you an example, one of them says 2 people will be working in a field. One will be taken, the other one left at home or left in the field. 2 women will be grinding the mill. One is taken, one is left behind. And then the disciples say, where are they taken? And it says, where the vultures gather and eat off the dead. That is where they're being taken. Does that sound like the righteous are being taken, or that the evil are being taken? Or the wicked?
The wicked.
Right. Because it has nothing to do with the righteous. Jesus coming like a thief in the night. You don't steal something good. Stealing is bad. It's associated with bad. Coming like a thief in the night is to say that you are, and it even talks about it, saying like the one who is asleep and not paying attention, that's the one who is going to have their clothes stolen, or raptured. They're going to be exposed. Their shame is going to be exposed. But those who are awake, the thief doesn't enter into the homes of those who are vigilant and awake. So they're not exposed to shame. So where's the thief going? If Jesus is coming like a thief in the night, is he going to the ones where the people are asleep and not paying attention to expose their shame, who are the wicked? Or is the thief coming over to the righteous to take all the righteous away? That it doesn't make any sense. So everything that points to any kind of rapture happening is a rapture of the wicked. But when does that rapture actually occur? If there is a rapture, like an actual like poof, you're gone, which I don't believe is really scriptural either. But if that is happening, it talks about this being the judgment day. So this final day of judgment is when this happens. And this is where vultures are gathered and all that stuff. So I would say that this is more at the end of tribulation, not at the beginning of tribulation. But also just it's a rapture of the wicked, if you want to call it a rapture. Oh, cool. So you're talking to Naz? I haven't talked to Naz in forever. It's been so long. Naz, we're even playing new games now. Actually, that'd be cool if Naz would get on like New World or something. Okay. Going into this other thing. Abram passed through the land to the place. This is talking about the altar. So if you were, I think he was in the first one, where in the first portion we went over Abel's altar, or Adam's altar, the altar that Adam built that Abel was using. And this is basically talked about how this is the same altar area that also was where Abraham built his altar. This is also where King Solomon also put the altar. So you've got Adam putting the altar, Abel putting the altar there, Abraham putting the altar there, Moses building an altar there. That's in Deuteronomy 27, 3-4. The altar for sacrificing Isaac, Genesis 22:2. King Solomon, 2 Samuel 24, 18-22. And then Cain and Abel and Adam sacrificing on that altar. That goes more into the midrash of like where Adam was put. It says, what was it? From the dust you were created, and from the dust you will return. Specifically speaking, from the dust that he was created from is the same spot that he's going to return to. So this is when Adam was created outside of the Garden of Eden. This was the place where he actually was, and it's roughly the area where the altar would be. And so he was created outside of the garden, so now he has to return back to the outside of the garden. And that's that symbolism in there as well. Also, dust you will return, speaking of death. Okay. And that's just more on that. So if you want a deeper dive into the altar and significance of the altar, you go back to our first portion from this year, or after Rosh Hashanah. And you can get the whole lowdown on that. I think it was like a 20-minute conversation. Okay. Anything else? Any other notes on Abram and Sarai? If not, we'll go into chapter 13. And for those of you that are new on Discord into this channel right now, you have to click on my name, and then you'll see the stream pop up. And if you have your audio turned on, you'll be able to hear the read along. We're just having it. We'll have it read out all of chapter 13. Probably about 3 minutes long, and then we'll go into more of the conversations about it. So Abram and Lot separate is the section that we're at, chapter 13. And previously, Abram is told to basically get up and leave, take everything. It says, go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. He also doesn't even specify like where this land is or anything. It's just saying, I'm going to show you a place to go to. Go there. There's nothing previous to this that indicates that like God hasn't shown him anything, told him to do anything other than just leave. Leave with you, all your family, everything else. Just leave. Just go, take everything and leave from where you're at. All the security, the riches, everything that you guys have. Just leave right now. And I'll make you a great nation. I'll bless you, make your name great. You will be a blessing, all this stuff. But in return, just start leaving right now. I'm not going to tell you where you're going, but do it. And Abram just leaves, and he also takes Lot. So Lot and Abram are going together right now. Abram's 75 years old, and that is where we have Abram and Lot separating, going into verse 13. Here we go.
So Abram went up from Egypt, he and his wife and all that he had, and Lot with him, into the Negeb. Now Abram was very rich in livestock, in silver, and in gold. And he journeyed on from the Negeb as far as Bethel, to the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Ai, to the place where he had made an altar at the first. And there Abram called upon the name of the Lord. And Lot, who went with Abram, also had flocks and herds and tents, so that the land could not support both of them dwelling together, for their possessions were so great that they could not dwell together. And there was strife between the herdsmen of Abram's livestock and the herdsmen of Lot's livestock. At that time the Canaanites and the Perizzites were dwelling in the land. Then Abram said to Lot, Let there be no strife between you and me, and between your herdsmen and my herdsmen, for we are kinsmen. Is not the whole land before you? Separate yourself from me. If you take the left hand, then I will go to the right, or if you take the right hand, then I will go to the left. And Lot lifted up his eyes and saw that the Jordan Valley was well watered everywhere, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt in the direction of Zoar. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. So Lot chose for himself all the Jordan Valley, and Lot journeyed east. Thus they separated from each other. Abram settled in the land of Canaan, while Lot settled among the cities of the valley, and moved his tent as far as Sodom. Now the men of Sodom were wicked, great sinners against the Lord. The Lord said to Abram, after Lot had separated from him, Lift up your eyes and look from the place where you are, northward and southward and eastward and westward. For all the land that you see I will give to you and to your offspring forever. I will make your offspring as the dust of the earth, so that if one can count the dust of the earth, your offspring also can be counted. Arise, walk through the length and the breadth of the land, for I will give it to you. So Abram moved his tent and came and settled by the oaks of Mamre, which are at Hebron, and there he built an altar to the Lord. In the days of Amraphel, king of...
Okay. Abram and Lot. Good stuff. So there's this conflict that's going on where Abram brings his nephew Lot, but the flocks are growing and there's not enough resources and things like that, whether it's water or grass or whatever else. They're growing too much to basically be together. So and just locationally, the Negev, this area that they're in, it's a very dry area in the wilderness. There's limited water to begin with, limited supplies. And so there is probably quite a bit of tension between the shepherds and also the people, between the shepherds, people, the flocks, like between the two groups of people, there's just significant amount of tension. Like you're running low on water or whatever else. So Abraham chooses to end the conflict, and he's like, goes up to Lot and says, I will give you the choice of land. What do you want? Being the bigger person, he's just, I will offer you, like, you can take whatever area you want the most, and you can have it, and I will take the other. Lot then decides, I'm going to take the most fertile land for myself. So he takes the fertile land, and Abram takes the less fertile land. The fertile land happens to be more towards Sodom, and Abram is going off in a different direction. Lot lives, during this time, Lot's living with all the wicked people, or surrounded by all the wicked people in a fertile land. However, it still calls Lot someone who is righteous. So even though he's living among all the unrighteous people, he's still considered righteous. The stories about Lot also, like, why even mention Lot? The stories of Lot tie into the origin of the Moabites and the Ammonites. These are the two people who became part of the Messianic lineage. You've got Boaz of Judah married Ruth the Moabite, or Moabitess. And then you have King Solomon marrying Naamah the Ammonitess. I think that's right, yeah. So Lot, Abram is important in the whole lineage of the Messiah. Lot is important in the lineage of the Messiah. Abraham rescued, this is just after this in chapter 14, which we're about to get into, but Abraham rescues Lot from the kings of the north, and then God rescues Lot from the destruction of Sodom, all for just the sake of the Messiah, so that the lineage could be preserved and everything. However, with the Messiah, both Abraham and Lot are reconciled. And I'm gonna find where that is. Anyway, the reconciliation is essentially that these two are separate. There is this conflict that had them have to separate, but in the Messiah, because both lineages drill down to the Messiah, they're reconciled within the Messiah, because the Messiah brings everyone back together. So whereas this conflict separated them, the Messianic age brings them back together, brings in everyone into a very, very fertile area that can support everyone. The other thing is a Genesis Rabbah here. Rabbah 41:9, which plays into this as well. I think that's, I didn't go too far, right? Yeah. Yeah, okay. But the Rabbah is, I will make your seed like the dust of the earth, just as the dust is scattered from one end of the earth to the other, so will your children be found from one end of the earth to the other. This speaks of an exile and a regathering of all the people. When dust is irrigated with water, it brings life. So too will the people be gathered and be given the living waters, so that they will bear much fruit. So in verse 16, 13:16, it says, I will make your offspring as the dust of the earth. So if one can count the dust of the earth, your offspring will also be counted. And that's where the Rabbah comes in and is talking about how when the dust is irrigated with living water, it brings life. Likewise, the offspring with the Messiah, the life-giving water, they will also bear much good fruit. All right. Anything else? And then we're going to move into 14. Oh, I do want to make one note on Sodom. So there's this whole thing with Lot, and there's people who are trying to do things. Yeah. I think that's in. No, I'll just wait until 14. All right, we're going to read through 14. But any other comments, questions, anything else before we get into 14? And then I'll talk about more on Sodom.
Well,
Yeah.
I would say Abraham is being set up as a new Adam. So if we go back to Genesis 1, Adam was to be fruitful and multiply. So here with Abraham, it's given as a promise. So in this narrative, this is about creation. This is going to be a new creation in the story of Abraham. And so if you notice also, when it comes to Abraham, the promises, the land promises, this is dominion. When we think back to Adam, what was Adam to do? He was to have dominion over the entire earth. So you've got the Adamic mandate of being fruitful and multiplying and having dominion over an area of land in Abraham. So you've got Adamic themes now coming into the story of Abraham, and he's being set up as a new Adam. And so it really ties back into this idea of creation. What is the Most High's purpose that we see in Genesis 1? It's now being played out in the story of Abraham, or Abraham and Sarai at this point. And so you've got this continual cycle now, what's going on about raising up a new Adam. The Most High starting this story of Abraham, and it's going to continue through his seed. And you're going to see this twin mandate that's given to Adam also pass on to his seed as well. And this will terminate, but continue on into even the nation of Israel. Because what you see in Exodus chapter 1 is that they were being fruitful, multiplying, and filling the land. And so again, you've got this Adamic language being ascribed to the nation, and now the nation's going to be set up as the new Adam. So you've got these Adamic themes now coming into play. Also notice the storyline of Abraham. When you compare this to the story of the Exodus, right? Abraham goes, has an encounter with Pharaoh, which we just read in chapter 12. And he comes out of great wealth after the story. Well, this really is the story of the Exodus. And so if you notice also, the Most High plagues Pharaoh. And just like how in the story of the Exodus, Most High plagues the Pharaoh, and then the people come out of great wealth. Well, this is really the story of Abraham. And so you've got Abrahamic themes within the story of the Exodus as well. And so really Genesis ties into the story of Exodus as well. So this is all interplaying with each other. But anyway, that's my comments.
I like that. I'm actually going to writing some of those down and tagging the verses real quick. Any other comments, commentary, comparisons? Yeah, Noah was in Adam as well. We went through a lot of that, all those analogies, even like the dove analogy being set up as a Messiah figure, the ark representing numerous different things, the three tiers, temple, yeah, the great waters, all that stuff. Okay. All right, and we'll go into chapter 14 is where we're at. Yeah. All right, chapter 14. Here we go.
Shinar, Arioch king of Elasar, Chedorlaomer king of Elam, and Tidal king of Goyim. These kings made war with Bera king of Sodom, Birsha king of Gomorrah, Shinab king of Admah, Shemeber king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is Zoar. And all these joined forces in the valley of Siddim, that is the Salt Sea. 12 years they had served Chedorlaomer, but in the 13th year they rebelled. In the 14th year, Chedorlaomer and the kings who were with him came and defeated the Rephaim in Ashtaroth-Karnaim, the Zuzim in Ham, the Emim in Sheva-Kiriathaim, and the Horites in their hill country of Seir as far as El-Paran on the border of the wilderness. Then they turned back and came to En-Mishpat, that is Kadesh, and defeated all the country of the Amalekites and also the Amorites who were dwelling in Hazazon-Tamar. Then the king of Sodom, the king of Gomorrah, the king of Admah, the king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is Zoar, went out, and they joined battle in the valley of Siddim with Chedorlaomer king of Elam, Tidal king of Goyim, Amraphel king of Shinar, and Arioch king of Elasar, 4 kings against 5. Now the valley of Siddim was full of bitumen pits, and as the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, some fell into them, and the rest fled to the hill country. So the enemy took all the possessions of Sodom and Gomorrah, and all their provisions, and went their way. They also took Lot, the son of Abram's brother, who was dwelling in Sodom, and his possessions, and went their way. Then one who had escaped came and told Abram the Hebrew, who was living by the oaks of Mamre the Amorite, brother of Eshcol and of Aner. These were allies of Abram. When Abram heard that his kinsman had been taken captive, he led forth his trained men, born in his house, 318 of them, and went in pursuit as far as Dan. And he divided his forces against them by night, he and his servants, and defeated them and pursued them to Hobah, north of Damascus. Then he brought back all the possessions, and also brought back his kinsman Lot with his possessions, and the women and the people. After his return,
Yeah, just to bounce off of that. So when you think about Abraham, it's given a context, a military context here. You know, why is this coming into the storyline now? Why is it showing the military aspect of Abraham? Well, in Genesis chapter 1, Adam was to radah, as to tread down, and have dominion over the earth. So there's kind of like a military context that we have with Adam in Genesis 1. And so again, this may be an outflow of that type of context now flowing into Abraham. And this is demonstrating how Abraham is going to Radar, Abraham is going to Radar, is going to tread down his enemies, and then he brings back Lot, and he unites again. So you've got this kind of idea of uniting as well, coming back, making things whole, and then obviously he's going to be blessed by Melchizedek, which there may be a hint there that Abraham is being set up with priesthood, and with Adam in Genesis 1-3, it uses priestly terminology. Like, for instance, when Adam is told what his role is to serve and keep the garden. Well, the actual Hebrew words there are the words that you see employed with the priesthood. And so you've got these themes of priesthood and military aspects now flowing together into one person. So anyway, my computer's going a bit weird, but I'm going to stop right there.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't even notice that part. I'm adding that in there. Okay. Yeah, and thank you. And Naz, it's so good having you back. I missed you, man. Okay, Abram blessed by Melchizedek. And did I say we're going to go through 15? 15? Yeah, we'll go through. Yeah, okay. We're going to do Abram blessed by Melchizedek. Verse 17 through 24. And then we have one more chapter after this, and then we'll be done.
Turned from the defeat of Kedorlaomer and the kings who were with him, the king of Sodom went out to meet him at the valley of Sheva, that is the king's valley. And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was priest of God Most High. And he blessed him and said, Blessed be Abram by God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth. And blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand. And Abram gave him 1/10 of everything. And the king of Sodom said to Abram, Give me the persons, but take the goods for yourself. But Abram said to the king of Sodom, I have lifted my hand to the Lord, God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth, that I would not take a thread or a sandal strap or anything that is yours, lest you should say, I have made Abram rich. I will take nothing but what the young men have eaten, and the share of the men who went with me. Let Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre take their share.
Okay, a lot of really cool stuff in here. What's interesting is that the king is offering a deal, something where it's like, I will give you tons of riches and goods in exchange for people, but Abram doesn't want that. He's essentially saying, like, I don't want anyone to think that it is from a man that I've received anything. It is only from God that I've received everything from. Just a really, really cool lesson to be learned in there as well. One of the other things is Melchizedek is not necessarily a personal name. It's an honorific title. I think looking up the name right here. Yeah, the name means King of Righteousness. He was the king of Salem, which is also the ancient name for Jerusalem, which is found in Psalm 76:2. This invites the interpretation that the Messiah would also be the king of the righteous, who would dwell and rule over Jerusalem. And that's in Hebrews 7:2. And Paul also considers that the king of peace could also be the king of righteousness, since the king of righteousness will usher in an era of peace. So the idea of like this Melchizedek title is being passed on to the Messiah, because it is the king of righteousness, the king of peace, that would be ushering in this new age. Not that Melchizedek is the Messiah, but that in the same manner of Melchizedek, so is the Messiah. And Melchizedek, more than likely, and I think anyway, would be Shem, because that would have been passed down. We kind of talked about that a little bit when we were going over the sons of Noah, being that he would have been around during that same time. It's also called, God is also called the God of Shem, where that title is somewhat passed down from God of Shem to God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob. And so it seems like this is almost like a title that's being passed down through these patriarchs. Messiah prefigured. And let me see if I've got the... Oh, there's a couple notes here. So it says that Melchizedek, or some would say Melchizedek is Jesus in the Old Testament, as well as like the angel of the Lord and that sort of thing. But according to Psalm, it says that it is to the order of Melchizedek, not Melchizedek is a priest forever, but rather the order of Melchizedek. So in the same manner of Melchizedek, but not that Melchizedek is the Messiah, just that the Messiah would be in the same manner. And also Hebrews 7:3 is just pointing out that there is no father or mother genealogy recorded, but resembling that the Son of God, he continues to be a priest forever. It doesn't talk about Melchizedek ever dying, and therefore he is seen as a priest forever, in the same way that Jesus, there is no record of him dying after the resurrection, and therefore he is a priest forever. There's also some first century writers who had a similar idea about Melchizedek, saying that he was assumed into heaven, similar to Enoch, and he was an eternal priest, and that's found in the War Scroll. Philo also wrote about it, understanding Melchizedek to be almost like an equal to the Logos, or the Word of God, having the spirit of Messiah on him. However, he was not. However, even though he's like the spirit of Messiah, he was a real king in a city and was a normal human. He was not like an angelic being or anything, even according to Philo. So the idea that Melchizedek is the Word made flesh, and kind of in that theory, Melchizedek is the Word, but also he was just an actual person who was living as a king. Yeah, and then Zechariah 6:11 through 13 speaks of the branch who would play both the role of the king and the priest. But the king must be from the line of David, and priest must be from the line of Aaron. And the one who inherits the tribe from their father, or one inherits the tribe from their father. So how can someone be both a priest and a king? Because you are either from the tribe of David, or from the line of David, or you'd be from the line of Aaron. And it speaks of basically this reconciliation happening by being a heavenly priest rather than an earthly priest. So the heavenly priesthood does not have any requirements for a lineage, but the earthly priesthood does. I think this is in Hebrews. What's this? Yeah, Hebrews 7:15 through 19. When another priest arises in the likeness of Melchizedek, who has become a priest not on the basis of a legal requirement considering bodily descent, but by the power of an indestructible life, you are a priest forever after the order of the Melchizedek. For on one hand, a former commandment is set aside because of its weakness and uselessness, for the law was not law made nothing perfect, but on the other hand, a better hope is introduced for the law which we draw near to God. For the one whom these things are spoken belong to another tribe for which no one has ever served at the altar, for it is evident that our Lord was descended from Judah, and his connection with the tribe of Moses said nothing about those priests. So there's this whole concept that you can be a priest and a king, and it is reconciled. This is something that is also in the Old Testament, it is in the New Testament, and it's reconciled within Messiah itself. Yeah, and like Melchizedek's name being a title, when we say Hashem, it's just saying the name. It's a title, but not his name. Okay. Any other comments, questions, or anything else on Melchizedek?
Yeah, when you think about it, Adam didn't have a lineage, right? He was created from the dust of the ground. He doesn't have a lineage, and so when you look at Melchizedek, he's not associated with a lineage, but he's called a priest. But we know with the Levitical priesthood that you would have to be a descendant of Aaron, or of the Levites. So there certainly is something going on here with Melchizedek, and no previous lineage that's detailed. It doesn't mean that he didn't have a previous lineage; it's just not detailed. And so again, is this a priestly concern? Because if Adam is set up as a priest, because of the kind of priestly language that's associated with Genesis 1-3, then there you might have another subtle connection to the priesthood.
Would you say that, well, because Hebrews says that no man is served in that lineage, but would you say that Adam then is a high priest in the heavenly priesthood because the Garden of Eden was essentially seen as this heaven, or the third heaven, or however?
Well, the Garden of Eden, at least in the Second Temple period, was understood to be akin to the Holy of Holies. So that in the Second Temple period, you've got works like the Book of Jubilees, which flat out says that Eden was the Holy of Holies. And so there you've got a community associating Adam with the Holy of Holies. So the inference from that is, well, Adam is akin to the high priest because of this level of holiness. And if you think about Revelation chapter 22, what do you see? You see Jerusalem descending down. If you remember, Eden came down. It was planted, right? It's descent and planted. And so you got this kind of same imagery of New Jerusalem in Revelation. It descends down like it's being planted. And then what you see in Revelation 22 is New Jerusalem is associated with Eden, right? It's got the tree of life there, just like how Eden's got the tree of life. And the people have got the divine name on their heads, or they're associated with a divine name in Revelation 22. And if you go back to the high priest bears the divine name when he does his priestly duties. So you've got there kind of like this three-way connection of Jerusalem and Eden and the Holy of Holies all combining into one. And so again, it just adds to the kind of priestly imagery that's just under the surface when it comes to Adam. So if the Torah there is trying to raise up a new Adam, all of these elements now are going to be coming together in a certain figure. And so you've got the beginnings here with Abraham of all of these things being unified together. But you also see these types of ideas played out in figures like Noah, for instance. So the ark is three-tiered. Well, later on, what you'll see of the temple is it's three-tiered. That there's three main areas: the Holy of Holies, the holy place, and the outer court. And so when they enter into the ark, they're not allowed into the ark unless Noah goes into the ark. So they need him. It's really, really important. And it's just the same when you get to the mountain with the Exodus and Moses. No one's allowed up that mountain apart from Moses going up. So again, they're coming into proximity with the Most High. And so this necessitates someone to be basically a priest. And so, you've got these themes playing out in the story of Abraham now.
That's actually really funny that you mentioned that, because I was going to ask how this ties into Mount Sinai, because they were called to a priesthood, and after Moses went up, there was actually a time where Father said, "When I blow the trumpet, come up," and they didn't.
Yeah, what you'll see in Exodus, if you go to Exodus chapter 1, verse 7, you've got Adamic language being ascribed to the nation. They were fruitful, multiplying, and filling the land. This is intentional. It's to bring to mind Adam. And so basically what the Most High is doing with Israel is he's setting up them as a new Adam. He's going to give them land. They're going to have dominion, just like how Adam was to have dominion over the entire earth. Israel now is going to have dominion over the land. And so this mandate that's given to Adam now is also going to be played out with the nation of Israel. And so it makes complete sense now that they're also being associated with this idea of priesthood. And you've also got parallels between Adam and Israel when it comes to even when sin enters the picture, when they fall, right? Adam ate something and then he was kicked out of the garden. He broke the commandments. And you're going to see the story played out with Israel. With the sin of the golden calf and other things like this, where they break the commandments and then they're exiled. So they're mimicking the pattern there of Adam. And so the function of this is we keep seeing these cycles with Noah, with Adam, with Adam, Noah, Abraham and his descendants, Israel, the nation, and also other figures as well. Of this kind of cycle of trying to raise up this new Adam, because what you see in Genesis 1-3 is the Most High's original intent. And so that hasn't stopped. That's going to outplay. And ultimately, this is going to culminate in conceptions of the Messiah, right? Because as you see in like the Pauline epistles, he compares the Messiah to Adam. Why is he doing that? Where is he getting the reasoning there? Why would he make that kind of connection? Well, if you're reading the Torah and the rest of the Tanakh in a cycle type of way where it's trying to raise up a new Adam, but there's failure, there's sin enters the picture, it's going to build your conceptions that the Most High is going to succeed one day with a figure who's going to be the new Adam, who's going to prevail. And so again, it's going to draw back to this idea of first Adam, last Adam. And so when you realize you've got this idea of unification that's going on in Genesis, you're going to see this also with the story of Joseph. If you notice at the very end, everything's unified, that the brothers are all back together, the problems of fertility are overcome, right? If you notice in the stories of Genesis, you get these repeating stories of, well, there's a famine there, people are barren. So you've got this idea of fertility. Something's wrong that needs to be overcome. And at the end of Genesis, with the story of Joseph, he overcomes the curse of the land, because he stores up the grain, the seed, and he overcomes the curse there of the barren land. Joseph is fruitful, but he has a wife, he has children, he's being made fruitful in the land. And so again, you've got this kind of new Adam being set up with Joseph. And with Joseph, you also see the unification with all the brothers as well. So all the brothers now come back in and they all dwell at a certain spot. And so again, you've got these very Adamic themes now outplaying in all of the stories, in all of the cycles. And this also has an impact for our reading of why Sarah is barren. You know, why do we have this kind of narrative of a barren woman that repeats? It's trying to tell you something. It's about creation. It's about overcoming the problems of Genesis 1 to 3. Because in Genesis 1 to 3, what do you see? You see this kind of three-tiered curse placed upon mankind. Eve is to go through pain in childbirth. So this means childbirth is now going to be problematic. It could lead to infertility and things like this. The ground is cursed. So you've got like ideas of famine and things like that. That needs to be overcome. So both of those, what links those two is the idea of fertility. And then you've also got the animals as well. They're going to be cursed. So that indicates for infertility in the animal world as well. And so when you see Abraham and he's got lots of flocks, well, he's overcoming the curse. When his barren wife gives birth, well, he's overcoming the curse of Genesis 1 to 3. And so again, all of this plays into Genesis 1 to 3. And this is why when you read like text like Revelation, it bridges these things together. This is why you're seeing New Jerusalem being associated with Eden. It's telling you that was the original intent, and here's how that's outplaying. And you've got your new Adam. And so the Messiah plays out the role of the new Adam, and he's placed in the New Jerusalem. Well, the New Jerusalem's the Eden. So again, it's just the story of Genesis 1 to 3. Now it's outplayed in the role of the Messiah. But here's the thing. It's not just centered on the Messiah. It's also centered on us. It's bringing back the purpose of mankind. And so basically the Messiah elevates the community and makes the community into the Adam that was the original purpose in Genesis 1 to 3. You'll see text like in Revelation where you'll be ruling with the Messiah. Why is it telling you that? Why is it not focused just solely on the Messiah? He'll rule. No, it says that we will rule with him. Well, it's the Adamic mandate. Adam was to rule over the entire earth. That's the purpose of mankind. That hasn't changed. It's just simply the Most High is raising up the Messiah to elevate the community so that now we do participate in that rule that we was meant to have, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that.
I wanted to ask, what's the ritual with the wine and the bread?
What with Melchizedek?
Yeah, it's just another very old ritual with wine and bread, and it's the first time I see it very early in the Bible, and it's strange. I mean, it's not mentioned. There's no temple. There's no anything, but there's this ritual already.
It's interesting. You've got different ideas about what it, why is it there? I don't really have a lot of comment. I mean, I could say stuff, but it'd be pure speculation about the meaning of it. You've got text in the Torah where when Israel told to go and defeat their enemies, the Torah says basically that their enemies shall be their bread. And so it associates this idea of dominion and eating of bread with military conquest. And what I find interesting in Genesis 14 is that, well, you've just had a military context, right? Abraham has just went with 318 men, defeated the enemies, and you've got a war context. And then suddenly he's with Melchizedek, and Melchizedek gives him bread and wine. So is this bread reflective of a military context that we see later on, like in the book of Numbers, where the people of the land shall be as their bread? It's possible, but I just have speculation there of what that could mean.
Because it's early Passover. It's like the earliest mention of Passover, so it could explain something to the origin of the ritual.
I mean, it's a possibility. It's one of those things we're not really told what it is. Well, why is this here? And so for me, I can't press any particular interpretation too hard because we just don't have enough data to say what that actually means.
I mean, there's talking about, if you go off Melchizedek being the title, like the king of righteousness or the king of peace, coming, setting a table with bread and wine before Abraham and his men. I guess you could see a similarity with the last Seder, but also I would say more so pointing towards the Messianic age, where right after the conquest and everything else, you have this what's supposed to be this great banquet in the kingdom of God, where you are with the King of Righteousness, you're with the Messiah, and you're at this giant banquet. So I think it can play into that, being like he brings out bread and wine, a banquet of some sort, and this King of Righteousness there. If it plays directly into the Seder, or if that's just a preview of something or something bigger, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Unfortunately, we just don't have enough information to really say either way. I mean, it could go back to the idea of fertility again, because you got this language of possessor of heaven and the earth. So it's kind of got like a cosmic kind of consequence there, or kind of leaning into kind of a cosmic kind of context, where the entire universe is being kind of brought into the story, and then he brings out bread and wine. So is bread and wine like symbols of fertility, for instance? Fruitfulness. It could be. I mean, later on, what you see of the priesthood, where certainly with the high priest and the temple, is that the temple and the high priest are associated with all of creation itself. And so when you look at the high priest, you're looking at the entire cosmos, you're looking at the entire universe. When you look at the temple, you're looking at the entire universe. Because in the ancient world, temples were associated with the universe. And even in Second Temple period material, like Philo and Josephus and the rabbinic material and so forth like this, when they conceived of the temple and the high priest, they also thought about the universe. You know, the high priest represents the universe. Different parts of his garments represent different parts of the universe. Same with the temple. And so could it have to do with some kind of that kind of context as well?
Yeah. It's interesting. Speaking of like more of the messianic foreshadow, or the opposite, I guess, is an anti-Messiah, kind of a prefigured as well. And I think a lot of the stories have this idea of an anti-Messiah. So if Melchizedek essentially is the Messiah prefigured, and in this scenario, then the king of Sodom would be, I guess, the Antichrist, or the anti-Messiah being prefigured. I think it's in Genesis 14:21. Yeah, it says more directly in the Hebrew anyway. It's give me the souls, the people, but give me the souls and take the goods for yourself. Exchanging the people for the wealth or the money, the things of this world. And yeah, so I think that there's some sort of a foreshadow of a anti-Messiah within this. And I haven't really done too much digging into the anti-Messiah aspect of all these stories, but I'm starting to kind of get a glimpse of this. You know, give me something more spiritual, give me the people, give me this, and in return I'll give you riches, I'll give you property, I will give you things of this world. So it's interesting thing. But I haven't really dug too much into anti-Messiah prefiguring. I don't know if you have, Naz, but I think it'd be something cool to look at. Okay. It is actually getting pretty late over here, and I still have to get wrap up with the kids' Torah portion stuff before we do dinner. So I might stop it at 14, and then next week we'll do 15 through, I don't know, maybe like 22 or something like that, and then in I think a couple portions we should be caught up on the weekly. This is just taking a little bit longer than I was expecting to get caught up. But anyways, any other comments, questions, or anything with chapter 14? And then we're getting into the covenant with Abram next week, next Saturday. Okay, so some comments in Twitch. Another stamp of the Messianic, Yeshua joining to Melchizedek, showing his title of both king and priest. Yep. The bread and wine must be consumed to benefit or enjoy its benefits. He states he is the bread and the wine, yet he is the word made flesh. Seems like a metaphor that the word of God must be consumed or brought into the temple. The temple being our body. When we read the word, it is consuming it to our temples. Yeah. Eating the word, that which gives life, everlasting life. All right. I think that's it. No other comments, questions, anything else? Not, then I'm going to go do Torah with the kids. All right. Well, have fun, everyone. Thank you for sticking around, hanging out with us. And next week, we should be doing another, I don't know, possibly 6-7 chapters. This one went like 3 hours long. So we'll probably do the same thing again next week. But yeah, if you guys want to chat about anything else throughout the week, I might be on a little bit later tonight going over some other materials. We might talk more about the rapture stuff, and there are some questions in regards to some other beliefs, like different belief systems within Torah observance and what people follow. So we might go down that rabbit trail as well later. But yeah, just hop into Discord if you don't have Discord. If you're on Twitch or whatever, there is, I'm just gonna type Discord. There it is. So yeah, jump into our Discord and ask questions, poke around. Feel free to put any kind of commentary, scripture commentary or whatever else. People may refute it or agree with it, but it's all supposed to be constructive criticism. So until next week, shalom. Piff, did you want to play us out? Piff.
I can't tonight. I'm too poorly. I
Okay.
can't really sing at the moment. I'm sorry. Otherwise, I
Okay,
would.
well, I'll pray for you. Poorly. That is a very British way of saying it. Okay. I will see you guys all next week. Take care. Enjoy. Shalom.
Shalom.
Shalom.